Gender-based violence and child rights violations are pervasive issues that affect millions of individuals worldwide, causing immeasurable harm and suffering. These human rights abuses are often shrouded in silence, perpetuating a culture of fear, shame and impunity. It is essential to shed light on these critical concerns, explore their complexities, and advocate for collective action to prevent and respond to the menace and child rights violations. GBV is a profound violation of human rights, encompassing physical, sexual, emotional, and psychological abuse directed against individuals based on their gender. These issues and more are what Distortion, a book written by Ejiro Umukoro, is out to address. We are now joined by the author Ejiro to speak on this menace as contained in this investigative mental health crime novel. Good to have you with us.
A pleasure to be with you, Aaron and Neil.
All right, very good. So how do you hope to foster societal change through your novel, Distortion?
You know, it's so easy to just talk about the news and then we forget the news. But when you compress a very important issue such as gender-based violence into a novel, it stays with us forever. It becomes a reference point, somewhere you can reach on your shelves and just pick it out. And most importantly, it's because when you understand that when you raise children to understand the difficulty and the challenges faced with not knowing the difference between what gender violence is and the assault we see being perpetuated, it becomes a problem. I had the opportunity of being in Kirikiri, right, prison, and one of the things I observed were when we had young children, boys, between the ages of 10, 11, the conversation was that they didn't even know that rape was a crime. So I just realized that, oh my gosh, if young children do not understand that rape is a crime as young as they are, it means parents have failed in the mentoring and parenting. It means the school are not doing enough when it comes to proper sex education. It means we're also not teaching children and modeling before children how you can't just assault somebody else simply because you have the power or the opportunity to do so, which enables what we see today. The bullying you see around is a reflection of our tolerance for any form of gender-based violence. And when we talk about gender-based violence, it's not about just a man against a woman. It could be a woman on a woman, a man on a man, and vice versa, and children on children. Funny enough, that is not as talked about as it should be.
All right, so when you talk about gender-based violence now, where do we draw the line and draw the distinction between that and bullying? Because when you bring in young children into this conversation, like you mentioned something about sex education, because even in the UK, it's a hot button topic.
Absolutely.
And there have been talks that they need to scale back because sometimes too many information could be counterproductive to the young mind because you're exposing them to a world that they are not even ready for and their brains are not formed for. Bullying too, where do we draw the line and say that, okay, probably bullying, because you cannot teach, I don't think you should teach a child that is probably 9 and below sex education and stuff like that, except in rare circumstances. So how do we get to balance this whole thing and at the same time still pass the message that violence or any kind of assault is a no-no?
Now, during my work as an investigative journalist, one of the things I found out, because I spoke with a lot of young children, there was a 5-year-old incident that happened in Lagos State, and a 35-year-old exploited this little child. The only reason we were able to understand what that child was able to say in the parents' presence was when she was able to use specific words to describe a specific part of her body. Sex education means teaching your child the parts of the body with their proper names. It doesn't mean you're exposing your child compared to what we see on TV today, where music, what we're having is a glorification and a sexualization. Those are different concepts. And when you perpetuate that with a social media age where digital access has made things possible, what happens is you inundate the mind of those children. It has nothing to do with sex education. Two different conversations. That is overexposure. But I get what you mean.
Sex education in a controlled environment.
In a controlled environment. That's
why. Like a school, for example.
In schools, what is done is you have to teach the child their proper parts and proper naming. A tree is a tree. A bitter leaf tree is a particular kind of tree or plant, but you have to name it. In teaching it, you don't now say you teach them the act of it. Those are different conversations. You're not teaching them the acts of it. That's not sex education per se, depending on if you now get to a secondary school level and all that. But there are books out there, whether online or whatever. But when you talk about bullying, let us contextualize it. It's about somebody feeling I have the power to, fight you, overpower you, demean you, damage your self-image, damage your self-esteem. That's the goal of a typical bully. And in homes, we see that being perpetuated, where somebody feels I'm dominant, I'm the head, I'm the controller, I'm the breadwinner. It could be a man, it could be a woman. So when we see children model this more, if you look at homes, check out most of the children who are involved in some of these activities. Often it can be traced to the homes where either it is tolerated, where it is manifested, where it is condoned, and when it is a practice or even a way of life as well. And that's why talking about distortion in our society, one of the goals I wanted to do with this book was tap into the various aspects of how distorted a lot of things have become. For example, the idea of Usu, when somebody says you are lower than a human being, you are lesser, it's akin to racism, where you feel a particular person from a particular continent is not as superior as you are. From there also is another form of bullying, is another form of gender-based violence, where you determine that a particular set of people from a particular set of country are lower in the cadre of what you consider race. Now, when we see that happening in our society, you see ethnicity play out. You see how we do our politics. All of these are the various upside-down ways of distorting proper analysis of economic equivalence. Talk about political relevance. You talk about social importance of everybody. For example, in Nigeria, there are so many tribes in Nigeria. And yet, when we talk about tribes in Nigeria, we only mention 3 languages. How do we do that? That's a distortion. So many languages. For example, the Isoko and Urhobos are the 4th largest groups. You don't even hear them when you talk about languages. You go to Plateau, they speak several languages. You go to Kano, they speak as many languages as you can think of. You come to the western part of Nigeria as well, you see all of that diversity. So what we're saying is there shouldn't be a time where we just concentrate on a set and create stereotypes. And we need to change some of the perpetuated ideologies that we even have within our social conversations.
Still talking about the ideologies, one within the realm of exploitation here regarding indentured servitude, as it were. So from your investigations, which part of Nigeria is this most prominently practiced and why, you think?
So what I discovered was that there's this practice of financial bondage. It's pretty common in eastern Nigeria. But I've also seen it play out in other parts of Nigeria, where parents feel, because I cannot take care of my child anymore, I'm going to bond my child over to collect a certain amount of money so that they can go become slaves. In other words, we use the term which the law now says you can't use, the houseboy, the house girl. You are not allowed to say that or call anybody that. It's against the law in Nigeria to call anybody a houseboy, a house girl. I'm sure I'm going to shock some people about this, they don't know. But it's wrong, it's illegal to say that. But that's the mentality that drives it, where parents now feel, in order to save myself, I'm going to indenture my children. And we've seen a litany of that all over Nigeria. And I feel that's a distortion and it shouldn't be allowed, where parents give birth to children and because of difficult times, you bond your children as indentures to somebody else who not only take them out on sometimes child prostitution, other kind of human trafficking, even baby selling factories, which are some of the things I also uncovered. There are so many orphanages right now as we speak. Some are disguised as orphanages, but they are not orphanages. They're actually centers for baby selling, syndicacy, and all of that. And that's what I captured in the book Distortion.
Speaking on the particular topic about houseboys, house girls, or if we want to glorify it, domestic staff. At what age is there a statutory age limitation before you can say, okay, this person is actually my domestic staff? Question.
It's a child's right law. Children have voices. Children have their own status and their rights and privileges. It is child labor when you employ a child as young as that. It's another form of indenture. When you employ another child as young as that to come into your home, 5 a.m. the child is up. The child does not sleep until midnight. You make them do all the chores at home. You send them error.
So now when you say child,
so children, so there is difference between the kid entrepreneurship you're seeing and the slavery form of child exploitation and abuse.
Please,
so when you exploit a child, for example, let me break the difference.
Okay.
Child labor law is very clear. any child who is very young, from 18 as in adolescence, so from 15 down, right? If you take a child from a parent and your singular goal is to put that child in a home to probably sometimes go to school, right? But it does all the chores. You send them on errand, they don't sleep on time, you maltreat them, you mentally put them through a lot of psychological stress, you beat them physically, you threaten their lives, all of this kind of thing. They're exposed in that kind of environment. Those are not proper environments where you make them hungry sometimes, where you don't give them clothing, when you don't treat them as you would treat your child. That is child exploitation, that is child maltreatment, and the law is against that. Now, child entrepreneurship is different. This is the situation here. This is about a child who tells you, I am gifted. This is what I am good at. And parents now create an enabling environment where the child now begins to express that by learning and becoming good at it at their own time. No pressure, no pain. So they are supported, they are neighbor.
Happen in there's been this celebrated entrepreneurship model that they say the Igbos have probably perfected, the apprenticeship model that has been perfected. So anybody within the bracket of 15 and below, are you saying that it's
so let me clear that for you.
Okay.
So apprenticeship is a learning ground for young children to see how things are done. So for example, you want to learn a skill. They say it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill, right? So if, for example, a child, this is the key thing. This is the key thing.
Against their will, they do not probably consent.
That's why I stated it very clear. It has to be a child's desire, a child's passion, a child's willingness and commitment to it at their own time.
If the economic reality
now there are
of
also,
the parents,
let us also look at this.
Okay.
Economic reality is one point. Another point is this. When a child is trying to survive and live in a home where difficulties exist, we are all gifted differently. Some are academically gifted, some are not gifted academically. They are meant for, that's why you used to have ND programs, right? Technical schools. Some people are wired as technical people. Let us understand that. Some people are wired for academics. Some people are wired differently as well. So you know the child, how is this child gifted? And then you focus on that.
Many thanks for the distinction. And of course, that revelation, Ejiro Umukoro, author, Distortion, convener, African and Global Women in Media Leadership. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It's good to have you with us.